have to, above all, as a leader, help people do their best work. That is the number one goal, in my view, as a CEO, the number one obligation or responsibility.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our second episode of Real People in Real Estate. We've got another great show for you today. As today, we're going to kind of look at dynamic of entrepreneurship. And you should know our guest today, Leila Banijamali, who's the CEO of Symbium and co-founder of Symbium. Leila, how are you doing today?
Hey, how's it going, David? Great to see you.
Thanks for coming on today. It's always a pleasure, and a lot of our subscribers might recognize you from vendor spotlights we've done. Obviously, we've had a partnership over the last couple of years with Symbium, but that's not really what this show is about, right? The Real People series really is more about, we try to take the human side of it, the human angle of dealing with adversity, and obviously. In terms of entrepreneurs, leaders aren't just born, right? I mean, oftentimes it is your past, it is dealing with that adversity. Maybe if you're lucky enough to be exposed to diverse, opinions and beliefs. And so let's go ahead and start with you and your kind of upbringing here, which forged you into this role you're in today. And so, because you grew up overseas, right? You were in Libya, is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. Well, first of all, comment about your leaders aren't born. I don't know what you're talking about. I was born a leader,
Right.
but anyways, I'll roll with it. So of course, I'm kidding, of course. So I am actually a first generation Canadian American immigrant. So I was born in Iran during the revolution, and my family had to escape from all of that happening at the time. There was this major overthrow of government. And we moved to Canada. And I remember having this conversation with my parents when I was older, and them explaining to me that they really had to start from zero multiple times in their lives. And it was mainly because of this, and really close to the time that they left the country. Imagine leaving everything including your language, and starting from zero again in a totally new environment with totally new rules, and also having to succeed in grow a family, that you've already started to in, your home country. So all of that, I think, really, impacted my view of the world, and opened my I guess blinders up to understand, what it's like to be sort of an outsider in a new territory. I was very young, of course. I was only 2 years old, so I don't remember much at the time. But my entire life, I grew up listening to my parents talk to their friends who also left during the revolution and who also had settled in Canada about what it was like. And do you remember the times? And, oh, this is what happened to so-and-so who tried to leave and who was arrested and who was later beaten or killed. And so I remember hearing these things throughout my childhood into early adulthood. And that was just, reality. And I think people don't realize that is a very real life for any immigrant in any country.
That puts a perspective, on on things for sure. So you go there, you got a brand new, life here, trying to adapt, and you played competitive tennis. Growing up
did.
as well?
So I did. Right. So I was born in Iran, moved to Canada, pretty much through, I was about 7 years old. And we moved to Libya from there because my dad, who was an engineer, got a job at Mobil Oil, which was a large oil company, of course. He was an engineer just working there, kind of low to mid-level engineering job. And we were expats. I went to a English-speaking, initially it was an American school, and then after the war with the US, it became a Canadian school. Back to Canada in my teens, and that's when I picked up tennis. I picked up a little bit late, but I was so determined that I was going to be really great at this sport that I ended up becoming obsessive about my training. I ended up training, in fact, with the best players in Canada, the number one and number two players, shared the same coach, and then ended up getting a scholarship to play at USF, which in the end I did not accept. I just wanted to fast track my studies in undergrad. But yes, I did play competitive tennis, and it was a riot. I definitely learned a lot that I've been able to transfer over to life as a founder for sure.
Sure. I'd imagine. And tennis is one of those sports where, you're out there all alone. It's just you against that other, any flaws come out, there's nowhere to hide. Talking about dealing with adversity.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And what the thing people don't realize about a sport like that is being an individual sport. Sometimes you have 100 players in a tournament draw. Every week is a new tournament, and there's only one person who wins. So you have over 100 players that walk away losers, and they have to, pull themselves up off the floor and convince themselves that they're going to win in the next tournament and get up and do the same thing next week and the following week and the following week and so on. So it's a really interesting life. It definitely taught me about resilience and that coming back and, not, bowing down too quickly and, working hard and just putting in that grit. But it also taught me when to stop, which is also important.
Gotcha. Yeah. And you mentioned obsession, and obviously, that kind of obsession, obviously work ethic, and obviously that must have taken that, and you've obviously applied it in your future endeavors, including, becoming CEO, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's something that I sort of decided anytime I wanted to learn something or do something, I would become obsessive about understanding it. Same thing when I was in my undergrad, which I was able to complete in 3 years. It was a 4-year program. During that period, I decided that I wanted to learn music production. I was really, really interested in the creation of songs, studio work, not so much performance, although I think I would have had a blast being a performer. It was all studio stuff. And I spent a lot of time in, when I was in San Francisco doing my undergrad, just at the local Guitar Center, just trying to learn the gear. That was how I spent my free time, whatever there was. And I, ended up after law school or during law school, and also taking it after law school, producing an album with my music partner and, shooting some videos. We got some awards for it. It was really fun, but we were always studio musicians. So that was another example of something that I just decided I'm going to do this and I'm going to win at it. And I was quite satisfied with where I got.
And I've seen the video. We were lucky enough, Leila, you shared this stuff. And I got to tell you.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Really, I shared it with you. Oh, my goodness. You
did. You must have forgotten.
Wasn't it fun? Yeah.
It's really well done. I mean, I'm not kidding you. It's really, we were all like blown away.
Curse the Controls. That was the name of the band. It was really great. It was just me and Corey.
So you've got the tennis background. Obviously, these things are, obviously working in your favor. And I think the one thing oftentimes is people don't relate. Sometimes failure is what leads to success, right? At what point did you say, right, hey, maybe I'm failing at this, but use it to go ahead and do your next venture, or even know when is it time to hang it up and move on, right? Pivot.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. How do you know when to stop something and when to move on, when to pivot, when to quit, even if you want to call it that? I think it's a good question. I think when you start something, for me at least, I'll talk about myself. I have a very clear vision of where I want to be. I develop that. I spend enough time understanding where I want to be, and that takes some research. It may take some empathy for the problem that I'm trying to solve. And it allows me to create a mission statement about where I'm headed and why. And so the very first reason not to continue something is if it doesn't perfectly align with that mission statement or that vision. And so if more people did that, they would see that a lot of things, tasks, ideas would just drop off on their own, without doing too much work. So that's one reason to stop. The other is continuing to do the same thing over and over again and not seeing any improvement, or not improving, or not learning from lessons. I think that's another major mistake. That's when it's time to make some changes. What I like to do is I have these assumptions that I've created about my company, about what we're working on. There are 5 assumptions. I post them on stickies in front of me. I don't share them with anyone. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but
My
you
next
can kind
question.
of guess. You know, you can kind of guess. They have to do with, I assume that this is our target customers. I assume that our customers will be willing to pay X. I assume that this is how our target customers will behave on our website. So that's kind of the stuff I'm talking about. And when we're testing these in real life, when we've launched something, we're testing it, or before we launch, we're testing it just for initial user feedback, and our assumptions are found to be incorrect. Well, I rip that assumption off the wall, I change it, and then I put it back on. So I'm constantly testing these assumptions that I have. And so those are really great indicators, another great indicator for when to pivot.
Nice. So you've gone ahead. You've already had a music career, a tennis career. Right? You've dealt with a lot of adversity as a child. With that move from Iran, and now you've gone to the States. You've gone ahead and you've graduated from Stanford, right? Or have attended Stanford.
Yeah, no, well, that's a little bit later on. So I ended up coming to the States, went to USF, graduated from there, went back to Canada for law school, and then came here. The law school thing was a little strange. I mean, I ended up becoming a lawyer. I think I was pretty good at what I was doing, but it was not my first choice. I actually wanted to go into graphic design. I really love tinkering with shapes and designs until you kind of perfect something. Probably better that I didn't do that because I could spend too many hours tinkering and maybe not getting anywhere. But I did end up going to law school, really mostly at the direction of my father, who was just pushing doctor, lawyer, engineer, one of those 3. Those are the real jobs. So I can't believe I listened to him, but I ended up going to law school, and I'm glad I did because I could use it sort of. I pretty much use it on a daily basis. I mean, running a company, there's always something that comes up that I can say, okay, I learned from my legal career representing, 200 other startups when I was outside counsel. So that was helpful. And then, so that, and then based on, my experience being a startup lawyer, I ended up wrapping that up pretty quickly. I launched this company called Startup Documents that streamlines the Delaware incorporation process and a number of other startup documents, as the name says, for startup companies. And I pissed off a lot of lawyers when I did that.
Really?
Lots of them. Yes. And, but I did catch the attention of some folks at Stanford, this group called Codex, which is sort of, I explain it as the intersection between the law school and the computer science department. And this group, the directors invited me to come to their meetings. I was, asked to apply for a fellowship. I did. I was lucky to become a fellow. And then, that's when I was pulled into a group at the computer science department that was working on what eventually became Symbium. So I met my co-founders there.
Gotcha. And I've met
And
a lot
that
of
was
your
only
team.
like 5,
That's 5 years ago?
5 years ago. Yeah, something like that.
Nice.
Sorry, 2017. Yeah. Yeah. So 5 years ago.
Okay. And I tell you, we've met a lot of your team, obviously. You've got a great team.
Right.
You got, Pete and Linda I met, and Abjit. And I know there's more.
They're amazing.
And that's not even to mention Zuzu and Pepperjack. Yeah, they're seeing that on their screen right now.
All of our pets.
The other pets, which we loved, which we said, this is culturally you're a fit with us because we're all dog lovers.
We list all our pets on the team page on the website. So we've got our head of security, we've got HR. One of the cats is a permit expediter. My dog Monkey is a sleeper agent. So, we've got different pet roles. It's kind of fun.
That is fun. And it kind of circled back, you mentioned the mission statement, right? I mean, is that more of like your values that you're going to go ahead and want to produce from there? Or is it, is it financial? Is it, what kind of, I guess, what really dictates success to you?
When you I think, the value statements, I think are something else. I mean, the values are bred sort of through the actions that we, the actions that everyone takes as a member of our team every single day in team meetings, in external meetings, when they're heads down doing their work. But the mission statement is more about, this is the thing that we want to be when we grow up, right? So this is kind of, mission statement. Let's say if for a child or someone who's going to college is, I want to be a lawyer. That is my mission. I'm going to be a lawyer. That's what I'm headed towards. And these are the steps that I need to get there. So, in our case, we have a mission statement. We are going to be the permitting capital of California. That is the mission that we talk about in the company. Those are all of the steps that we're taking right now. We have some really cool permitting features that we're going to be launching pretty soon. But everything that we're doing is one step further in that direction. And I think that we're doing things in a way that no other company is doing. I think that the way that we're doing things is so much more exciting than what I've seen in the marketplace in terms of companies, doing these enterprise sales to cities on a, piece by piece basis. So I'm super excited about what we're up to there.
Nice. Exciting stuff. And what I would say, when you start this company, and everybody, in real estate, obviously, agents, everybody's really an entrepreneur. Every day you wake up kind of unemployed, and you're building your business. But what are some of the challenges that you found, right, with starting out, this business? It's got to be a little scary, obviously. Can you do this, and where are you going? So imagine you had some challenges early on when you were first starting.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's the same as a lot of different types of businesses, whether you're starting a bookstore or a food truck or, a tech company. At the very beginning, there's all kinds of challenges. And, I think through and through, the most difficult ones are often, or the most challenging things we face often have to do with people. And so it's very, very important to have the right team at the outset. You can say that about your company as well, MLS Listings. Every time I've had an interaction with you guys, it really seems like you're a family, like you're so tightly knit, you have fun. When we're on calls, we laugh and we joke. It's really great. It makes me feel like I want to apply for a job with you guys. Sincerely,
We'd love to have you. You're right along.
I'll be your assistant. I don't care what I do. But that's kind of like, the feeling that people get is that they need to be excited about the work that they're doing. So that's the number one challenge, is how do you find other people who really believe in this just like you do, or maybe not just like you do, but to some extent, maybe in their own way, So that's one of the challenges is finding those people when you're really, really early in stages, early days. It's hard to attract amazing talent too, because sometimes that amazing talent is easily gobbled up by the larger names, the bigger tech companies that can offer a better salary, can offer benefits packages, which we didn't offer any of. Sure. Outside of employee stock options in the beginning. So, that, and I mean, all kinds of perks that we just don't have. And oftentimes we would meet people that were, seemingly talented, people we would have liked to work with, but they couldn't make that jump because they had a family to support and they couldn't work at a company that didn't have health insurance, for example, to offer. So those were really big challenges in the early days with regards to people. There's other types of challenges too that have more to do with product. What is it? How do you decide on product decisions? How do you decide whether or not that's the right path for our product? We could have gone in so many different directions because the technology behind what we build is vertical agnostic. So why did we choose to start in the hardest industry on the planet, which is government, which is planning? Why did we choose that instead of other industries where, maybe it may be easier to get contracts to start? So those are really, those are sort of the challenges of starting a company. And of course, everyone has a different voice. So back to the people problem again. So someone may disagree with you, and that disagreement may be large enough where they think, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to go work at a different company. Right. And that's fine too. So that's part of the journey.
Yeah, and I think people are naturally adverse to change, right? It's right. Just something that's built into us. And in real estate, we've taken our lumps, believe me. Making some changes, and maybe the community wasn't ready for it, or just, how do you go ahead and kind of, talk to those people who are, don't want this change, and your mindset is this is where we need to go, right?
It's a great question. I mean, this is something that we can spend hours talking about. One of the realities that I noticed when we were having these sort of initial discovery calls and meetings with different city planning departments, we were saying, hey, we've got this great technology. It's going to streamline a lot of your processes, the regulations, which is the hardest part of what you do. Our technology will streamline the regulations so that your analysis of someone's permit application for this particular thing will become so much more faster, and it'll be more accurate and correct. And, and we could talk about all the features and how easy it was to use. And it's great, isn't it? And they would say, oh, yes, it's very interesting. It sounds very exciting. Okay, do you want it? Well, not really, no. So we would get them so excited. And then at the point where we would say, okay, just sign here and we can get it for you. And they say, well, no, hold on a second. We're actually really happy with what we're doing right now, even though it's inefficient, even though California has a major housing crisis and they're not approving enough housing units, even though so many things. And so, the friction at the counter between the public and the planning staff. I mean, all of these things you can talk about forever and ever and ever, but it doesn't mean that you're going to make a sale. So, when we have talked to some cities that have really pushed back on it, it's only because they're human, and humans are creatures of comfort. They really
Right.
feel most comfortable doing what they've always done all along, no matter any of those things that I just mentioned right now. No matter housing crisis, friction at the counter, the public wants a different process, no matter any of those things. The fact is that they're very comfortable doing things the way they've been doing it, and they want to protect their jobs, and they may even be worried that computers are going to take over their jobs.
Sure.
But that's not the case. At the end of the day, the most important part of the process is the homeowners who are wanting the projects and the planning staff who are able to apply their design thinking, their discretionary judgment on certain design features, that frankly can't be replicated well enough by computers. So, when we talk to people, it doesn't matter who they are, who are adverse to change, we really like to start with the challenge and not start with the solution and all of the bells and whistles and the features.
Right.
And if we can align ourselves on the challenge, we can explain that we are trying to solve a lot of the same things.
Right.
And so I think it's the approach, and you really need to listen to who you're talking to. That makes a big difference.
I'm going to take that into advisement in this.
Yeah.
In along those lines, in terms of opportunities, of your business, where you're looking to go, how do you, is it, when you're trying to find these opportunities, what are you looking for? I mean, does it have to do, maybe it's just the challenge of, no one else is doing this, or what is it? Maybe it's a pain point that, something that this needs to be better. I'm going to go be the one that does it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, candidly, the only place that we look to in the beginning when we're evaluating opportunities is the market itself. We have to look at who our primary users are and what is it that they want to experience. That's the most important part of our job, is servicing these users. And in our case, the number one users, the largest user group is homeowners, or project owners, people who want to understand what's currently on their property or a property they're evaluating, and how they can perform actions on it, like understanding what's allowed and filing a permit, for example, or understanding if they're eligible for an energy rebate based on the local regulations and how to apply for that, getting money, So that's one of the most important starting points, is just listening to users. What is it that they want? That is, I think, the most important thing for us, is to test the market, understand what is it that our users want that's lacking right now. And a lot of that is just going and talking to people, performing that user testing, the user discovery, trying to understand what it is that they're feeling challenged by? What are the bottlenecks and inefficiencies in their day to day? And then deciding whether or not we're in the best position to solve that and how. And is there something that we can offer that isn't already in the marketplace? And why would we be the ones that would be successful at that? So that's how we find those opportunities, is we just listen. There's so many out there. I'll tell you what, David, I have a problem as an entrepreneur that I go out into the world, whether I'm at a restaurant or shopping or traveling, and I see problems everywhere. Nothing is to my standard, really, if I think about it. And so I'm constantly thinking about, if I was going to reinvent this, this is how I would do it. Or they don't know what they're doing. They really got to change this so that, of course, I'm imposing my own opinion. Of course, people know what they're doing. They don't need me to tell them. But, I feel like if I didn't have an acute focus on success at Symbium, I would be highly distracted by a myriad, hundreds of opportunities that I feel like come flying at me all the time.
You know what, Leila? I think hearing that, I think you do need to come work for us, because we've got a lot of these same things. And I think it's important, no matter what you're doing, to always be trying to improve things, right? And to see those, those challenges. And that's the great thing about, as a trainer, we get to go and meet all these agents and realtors, and they come from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds. And it's one of the first things I learned is not to assume who I knew I was speaking with just because they're new to the business. I've talked to other CEOs, and they've come from, very technical backgrounds, some of them, it's just, you get the full range, but at the end of the day, it really adds to the diversity and the strength of our community as a whole, I think. Which is kind of why we started this Real People in Real Estate. Not just to talk about product. We have plenty of shows about that, but to kind of talk about, the human side of it, and growing, and how you become, a leader, whether if you're going to be a CEO or whatever you're doing, and put that into practice, and how it affects your decision making, right? Always really important. You've got a great team. Like I mentioned before, and when you're starting out there and you don't have the big 401ks to offer, the package deals that some of these big boys in the Bay Area can offer, how do you motivate a team, like that?
My shining personality, Dave, how could you even ask me that question? So, well, I'll tell you, in all seriousness though, how you motivate a team it just starts with the individual. I'll tell you a story. There was an event I went to at a law firm when I was practicing law. It was another law firm. It was a small firm here in San Francisco, downtown. Beautiful spread. I mean, it was like an art piece. There was like a waterfall of, grapes and cheeses and crackers and like all these. It was just really beautiful. I hadn't seen anything like that ever. And the whole point was, it was a fundraiser for someone who was running for state office. So, had a nice evening, saw some of my friends, enjoyed some of the cheese and crackers. And at the end of the event, I was actually helping one of the partners kind of clean up, and just kind of talking with him casually. And I noticed that he started to box some of that food, the remainder of the food, in these sort of small to-go food boxes. And I said, where are you taking all that stuff? Because most of it was just uneaten, except for like the major dents that I made. Really, most people didn't eat anything. So he said, I'm going to actually distribute this to the homeless in San Francisco. Would you like to come with me? And I said, of course I would like to come. This is really an incredible experience. This is totally aligned with what I'm interested in doing right now. I am in. You tell me what to do. So we packed the trunk of his massive Mercedes, by the way, which made me feel uncomfortable pulling up to these homeless encampments with this huge
Sure.
Mercedes. But he, apparently he's doing this regularly, and people come out of their tents, and it was just very easy, just kind of pulls up, steps outside his car, and even before he offers any food, he just took the time to talk to people and to give them the dignity of being a person, a human, with feelings, with dreams, with a story. And he knew them by name, and they knew him. And I just watched this, and he told me to sit in the car and watch, just to kind of get a sense of how he likes to do things. And I did. And I was so inspired by that moment, more so than anything that I had done in with my team at my office, anything that we had accomplished that night during this fundraiser. And of course, in the next stop, I got out and I did a lot of the same things. And I was really moved by the fact that, it really only has to start with the individual. That's how you motivate a team. You have to help people feel that they matter, that they're being heard, that they're important. You have to, above all, as a leader, you have to help people do their best work. That is probably the number one goal, in my view, as a CEO. The number one obligation or responsibility is helping people do their best work. In addition to capitalizing the company, and in addition to setting the long-term vision. I'm very much a product person. I like to be hands-on if it's not obvious from some of the other things I've said during this conversation. But I think that's the most important thing, is really listening to that individual and understanding how can you bring out the very, very best in them. And sometimes it doesn't work.
Sure. But I can know already that just looking at your company or employees, that you've built that kind of culture. So it does rub off, I do. And it's not always about the money. And some people are in it for money. Some people are in it for others. That's some of my favorite stories in this industry, are those that doesn't have to deal with, I closed the $30 million. It has to deal with, I put this, first time buyers into their first home, right? That story, uplifting kind of a thing. And I do think it rubs off. I just always believe that. And you're going to attract those kind of people if you're that kind of person as a leader.
That's exactly right. And, when I've done some real estate transactions in my day, of course, as you know, and, both as an attorney and then later as a broker under my law firm. But, one of the things that I really liked to do was really get to know the person that I was going to work with. I did this when I was taking on new clients at my law firm as well, is just sitting down and listening to them instead of pitching them why I'm the best option. Why am I the best lawyer? Why they should work with me? They shouldn't. What we should do is understand, make it a dialogue, and discover agreement, discover where we may have things aligned and where we may be able to help each other. So I think that is something that may be lost on a lot of new agents who are so desperate to get that first listing, or so desperate to get listings, period, that it becomes all about the sale, all about me. Why am I the best person? It's not about you. Yes, the anticipation is that you'll do an okay job, and some agents will do a tremendous job. Great. But it's really about that client, so taking the time to listen to them is, I think, the single most important thing that an agent can do.
I agree 100%. And Leila, to kind of wrap up, we've talked about the past, the current. What's the future hold for yourself? Where do you see yourself going? Where do you see Symbium going? I know you guys are always looking to be, the next cutting edge. What's in store for the future, or your vision?
Well, our company, we have this incredible, what we call computational law or comp law technology, that basically allows us to build the laws and regulations, really complex laws and regulations, right into the web application. So people can get visualizations of what's possible on a property in forms. They can get turn by turn sort of directions as to what they can do and what form, what permit is required, and so on and so forth. So I envision a world where we really advance that experience. I envision a world where every interaction that you have is going to be streamlined. Every regulatory interaction that you have is going to be streamlined such that you have the opportunity to understand the impact of your actions before you take them, so that you can decide whether or not you want to speed on this highway between these two states, or whether or not you want to throw out your weed because as you're entering into another state, it's illegal in that state. There's so many examples of that. But the point is that those decisions you should become informed of those decisions at the time that you need them, and not necessarily after you've already been told that you can't do that. You can't build that on your property. You couldn't have done that, and you shouldn't have submitted this permit in this way. And now you have to resubmit everything all over again, or, all of that work and time lost. And really the reason why the housing prices and the timeline to create new housing is just egregious. So I feel like that's sort of the vision that I have is, bringing those experiences to people at the time that they need them. And I would say starting with government, having this idea of a government relationship manager, what we talked about when we were, I gave this presentation at Stanford a couple of years ago, and I talked about this concept of government relationship management and how it's so important to me to have a singular place where I can go and perform these actions, to understand what I can do on my property, to appeal my property taxes if I disagree with them, to file for a business license, so many things. So that's the future that I envision is I will never want to stand in line at a DMV again because I want to go to Symbium, and I know that Symbium is going to bring me a much better experience.
I think information is always key. And if you can simplify things, Leila, I'm all for you. Because we all know how much red tape and, especially in this state, it can be to do things. Just get information. So you're doing a great service. I guess we'll wrap up maybe with one thing is, Leila, as a successful entrepreneur, right? And a great story, you've dealt with a lot. What's the one thing you would, a piece of advice that you give our subscribers, pertaining, whether it's real estate or whatever they're doing in their life, that suited you well and to get you through all this adversity?
So first of all, I'll say I'm going to answer that question, but I will say that I don't feel like I am a successful entrepreneur yet. I feel like, as someone who has very, very high standards for myself and also what we should accomplish in solving the hardest problems. I don't feel that I have become successful yet. And it really, I guess, depends on how you define success. But I'm thank you for, you may see me as successful, and I thank you for that. I think that's a compliment that you meant. So I think the best advice I can give is, as someone who's also on this journey to success, is to really understand and maintain a vision of where you are headed that is not created in isolation, but is informed by your primary user group and your advisors. And, it is an informed decision of where you want to get to, whether, is the market large enough? Are you the person that's going to do, why are you qualified to do this? I mean, all of these things will go into that over time. But I think maintaining that vision, and then second to that, I think everyone in every profession, especially if you're running your business, as I know real estate agents do, even though they hang their licenses at different firms, at the end of the day, they're all independent contractors and they are really essentially running their own businesses. It's important to develop some assumptions. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 5, and write those down, put them up in front of you, put them in your iPad, put them in your calendar, wherever you keep your notes, put them in front of you so that you can test your assumptions about your clients, your target clients, about your own business. And when you see that your assumptions are being tested and are failing, make changes right away. Check back with those assumptions and ask yourself, is that correct? What I thought my clients want from me? Is that correct? What I thought my clients would be willing to pay? What do I need to change in order to improve that? And so it's really, I think, more about the process and diligently sticking to that, obsessively sticking to that until you start to see some positive outcomes.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Leila, I want to thank you for joining us today. It's always great talking with you. Thank you for being a partner with MLS Listings, providing our community with such great products. I know we've got even more. We got some great things coming up planned, I think. So I'm sure we're going to be seeing you again, probably more on the product level. We probably won't be talking too much about our past, but but it was great to go ahead.
Great. I'm so excited. We're so proud of being a partner of MLS Listings. MLS Listings is actually the very first listing service in the country and in California where we launched to partner with Symbium. And we are so proud of that partnership.
That's fantastic. As are we. And to our subscribers, hey, thanks for tuning in. And stay tuned in the future for another real people in real estate, where you'll find, I think, each episode is got a kind of an overall similarity, but a different dynamic as we look at whether it's, agents who are doing things for charity, or maybe entrepreneurship, or just dealing with adversity. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
If you're a good boy, Mom will pay for a trip to the candy store too.